The search for extraterrestrial intelligence represents humanity's quest to find signs of life beyond Earth.
In the case of SETI, it's perfect to study non-human intelligences on Earth. Why not practice?
If you're curious about SETI or ever wondered what a whale might have in common with an alien, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Whales and Aliens, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence in the Salish Sea. I'm your host, Lisa Walker. Each spring, the humpback whales of the Salish Sea return from their winter breeding grounds, arriving in these cold, nutrient-rich waters to feed after months of fasting in the tropics. This is where the calves learn from their moms as they're gradually weaned. Through the summer, the whales feast on krill, herring, and other schooling fish, building the energy reserves they'll need for their 4,000-kilometer journey back to the tropical waters where they mate and give birth. Today, I'm honored to welcome Tasli Shaw to the podcast. Tasli is a humpback researcher whose long-term documentation of the Salish Sea population provides one of the most reliable records we have of who is using these waters and how the population is changing over time. Her work helps establish individual histories, track survival and reproduction, and monitor the overall health of this recovering population. She is also an artist, bringing an additional layer of observation and interpretation to the whales she studies.
I'm Tasli Shaw. I'm a naturalist, a captain, and an artist, and I'm the lead investigator with the Humpback Whales of the Salish Sea project. And humpbacks came into my life basically as they recolonized their former range in this area. Of course, the range in question being the Salish Sea. And I used to be employed as a marine naturalist out of Steveston, where we spent our days crossing the Strait of Georgia, those milky Strait of Georgia waters. Back in the early 2010s, there was generally no sign of large marine mammals out there on most days, with the exception of killer whales, of course, particularly the southern residents who would sometimes just kind of park at the mouth of the Fraser River for days on end. It's actually quite common in those days, but we just weren't really seeing humpbacks. And then all of a sudden in, I guess it was 2012, this individual humpback, who we now call Windy, spent basically the entire spring of that year in the lower Strait of Georgia, which is right on our doorstep. And so we were just delighted to be observing this juvenile humpback for days on end, which again was quite a novelty at the time. Back then there was humpback activity, but it was mostly concentrated down by Victoria, in Juan de Fuca Strait, not really in the Strait of Georgia as much. And Windy just really opened our eyes to this whole new species. He gifted me with my first ever humpback whale breach. I saw surface lunge feeding for the first time, and inexplicably, I think my only eye contact I've ever had with a wild whale was with Windy back in 2012, and never again since. So this was, I'd say, equal parts thrilling, but also a little vexing, I guess, because my curiosity about this apparent newcomer in the area wasn't really being satisfied when I was asking around about who is this whale? What's his name? What's his ID number? And we're sort of used to this concept of all these whales being quite well known and having nicknames because that's how it is for the killer whales. At least off the south coast of BC, that's how it is. And there wasn't really many answers for who these humpbacks were. So I got in contact with some different researchers across Vancouver Island, and we're questioning them about who the whales were, did they know who Windy was, like where he came from, what other humpbacks were here, and so on and so forth. And it turns out that there was a bit of a data gap in this region, specifically the lower Strait of Georgia and the Gulf Islands, which I relish the opportunity to fill that gap, and not by conducting any kind of highbrow experimental research, but just simply by documenting individuals and noting their behavior, which is something that, of course, naturalists do naturally when we're out there working on the whale watching boats. And then before I knew it, this turned into basically a full-time effort during the non-whale watching season, and we're now up to, I just checked before we spoke, 1,402 unique individuals that have been identified since 1997, and 70.3% of those have been seen in more than 1 year in this area. I didn't expect this to happen. Like, my gateway drug into whales, of course, like most people, was killer whales. But when all of a sudden you see this monumental change happening right in front of your eyes, you start to wonder, like, what's going on?
We use the humpback whale catalog as a one-stop shop,
if you will, of information on each individual whale, such as their age, their sex, relatedness to one another, any unique behaviors, to understand their population in the area. The vast majority of the contributions that we get are from the captains and the naturalists that work on the professional whale watching boats. By far and away, that's our most common contribution, and like, it just wouldn't be possible without them. So what we really are looking for is the big, beautiful, high resolution, perfect lighting, fluke shot is great and everything, but a distant, far away, off angle photo of just the dorsal is also very valuable to us, because not only are we providing a published photo ID catalog, we also have an extensive sightings database and registry that's associated with each individual.
This is why every sighting
is of value, not just the ones where you get the big HD perfect lighting fluke shot, because each sighting kind of helps the broader narrative, if you will.
To submit your sightings,
the easiest way is just go to our website, salishseahumpbacks.com, and our contact information is there, and you can just email it to me. Alternatively, it's the same process, but just a little bit of a workaround. I'm part of a collaboration of different researchers and NGOs across the BC coast that study and catalog humpback whales. And we have a website, the Canadian Pacific Humpback Collaboration, which will come up first result on Google if you just search for that. And you can also submit your photos through there. And I will be so appreciative, because I can't be everywhere all at once. Out on the water, no one can. So any encounter is highly valuable to our project. It's kind of funny, like when I go to bed at night, I like to listen to various like kind of adult storytelling, I guess you could say, or ASMR about mythology from different parts of the world. And I mean, like Greek mythology, classic obviously, but Big Mama to me is kind of like a mythological figure in this area, and the story that we tell about her coming here has become sort of part of the folklore, if you will. And so, as the story goes, she was first documented here by my colleague Mark Mallison in 1997, and she's been seen every year since then, with a little gap, I should clarify, between 97 and I think it was 2002. But her appearance in the area in 1997 was a big deal because humpbacks were not commonly sighted. Um, and of course, Mark having the foresight to take a picture of her tail fluke, we were able to identify her in subsequent years. And right up until 2025, she has brought 8 calves back to the area. She's got 6 grandkids and 5 great-grandkids. And also interesting, the top 3 most commonly sighted humpbacks in the area are
Big Mama and Divot, who is her eldest offspring, and Splitfin.
So, like, her and her 2 oldest kids are the top 3 most commonly encountered whales in this area.
Humpbacks once existed here.
Of course, prior to industrialized whaling. And then the industrial whalers came in, basically wiped them out, depleted them so severely. And now, almost a century later, they're back, and it's such a different world than it was a century ago. It's pretty clear, like, that the amount of vessel traffic, like large vessel traffic in the area, is an issue, but it's difficult to know the extent of the problem of humpbacks getting struck by large vessels because their bodies are very rarely recovered after a fatal large ship strike. And there's also a lot of fishing that takes place in this region of all different species, of course, and some of it is commercial and some of it is just for fun, just recreational. And unfortunately, those recreational crab traps, for example, present a problem for humpback whales. And we talk about like a cornucopia of threats to these humpback whales now that they're back in the region. But I have to say, to me, like fishing that's done for fun, and if that's like a threat to the welfare of the whales, then I think that needs to be looked at with a microscope. We've been given a second chance. It's sort of like a gift that they didn't go entirely extinct like other great whale species along the North Pacific coastline. You know, the North Pacific right whale, of course. Northeast Pacific right whale is like this fragile little treasure. Just, you know, I think there's approximately 30-ish maybe of them left out there. And so we're a ways away from having that second chance with them. We might never get it, but we have it with the humpback whales. So it's like, don't squander it. But the fact is, like, it's cool. Like, we're seeing these whales come back and they seem to be doing well, like robust body condition. I mean, that's all purely anecdotal, of course. You know, calves, like, it's very cool. The site fidelity piece is quite interesting. Even different parts of the Strait of Georgia, individuals are more likely to be found. Like Beak is who's Big Mama's calf, of course. He is so often found kind of like between Active and Thrasher Rock. Like he's just there like all the time. Like he'll make little forays up a little further north, but that's kind of his little zone right there.
The catalog encompasses sightings in the Salish Sea and waters adjacent to
kind of the western entrance of Juan de Fuca Strait. So Swiftsure Bank, which isn't technically part of the Salish Sea, but those animals do trickle into Juan de Fuca Strait and back out. So, and I mean, that's a whole, like, when you were talking about sort of those 100 blows all going off, that's what it can be like at Swiftsure Bank area. And coming back to the conservation piece, that's very scary because that's where the shipping lanes are. Just like, that's all the shipping traffic coming in here just goes right through there. I mean, I really focus on whale art. So it's like, do I do that because I like whales, or do I like whales because I do whale art? I'm not really sure. But I think, people like you and me who have experience on the water with like individual animals, we kind of have this unique perspective that I feel very privileged to have. And I try and bring that mythology and personal viewpoint to the work itself. And in that way, it's not just, no offense, but like a Wyland mural painted on the side of a building of some humpback whales that he doesn't know or care about. Every individual means something. I mean, yeah, it's almost comical, like how privileged it is, really. I'm like, I don't have a real job. I don't really see it that way. Even though there's hard parts to it, and heartache and sore feet and sunburns and all the rest. But that is another interesting component of the job, that you do get to interact with people from all over the world and like from all different walks of life. I mean, that's maybe a little misleading because it's fairly expensive to take a whale watching trip, so I think we kind of get a certain clientele, right? But yeah, I'm just like, I'm always amazed at like how people behave, good and bad. Oh my god, this is just, humans are so weird, just little apes. And it's like, here we are trying to understand whales and extraterrestrials. Hello, we can't even, I can't even figure us out. In 10 years, I think it would be great to know if we have been contacted by extraterrestrials. The whales are cool and everything, but I mean, that would be, I know some people say we have already been contacted, but for a pessimistic and cynical gal like me, slap the proof right in my face. And again, I'm quite a cynical sort, so I try not to put too much like emphasis on the magic of whales, if you will. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just my sort of personal outlook. But there was something, God, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but a little bit magical about that one moment. Like there was some sort of chemical, something circuitry happened in my brain right when I made eye contact with that whale that I'd never experienced before and have never experienced since. Which is why I think we actually did make eye contact rather than Wendy just kind of like looking at the boat in general, if that makes sense. Yeah, there I am admitting it on camera. Whales are magic. Fine, I said it. I think maybe where I come from and wanting to temper the feelings of woo-woo and whales is that I'm very sad seeing how they and other megafauna get put up on this pedestal way up here with pets, you know, and horses. And then all these other creatures we just treat them like garbage, and they live horrible existences. And I just don't, like, the meaning for this hierarchy is pretty damn arbitrary and has a lot to do with our culture. And yeah, it just makes me really sad because I love all animals and think that no creature should have to suffer in any way. And whether it's like a Dungeness crab or a humpback whale or the star-nosed mole rat or whatever, you know. So maybe that's why I try not to indulge that, oh, whales are whale exceptionalism, if you will. Even though they are exceptional, of course, but I'm just salty that not all creatures get that same treatment. What do the whales think of us? Because I don't know, like, we think so much about them. Sometimes I think it's sort of funny. It's like almost feels as if it's a one-sided relationship. There's literal fan clubs devoted to these animals, and we're out there taking their pictures all the time. And like, what do they think about humanity?
Fall has arrived in the Salish Sea, and beneath the surface, early fragments of humpback song are beginning to be heard. Soon, these waters will empty as the humpbacks begin their 4,000-kilometer journey toward their wintering grounds of Hawaii or Mexico.
Absolutely gorgeous day up here. It's calm. The wind it's here, but it's not much. It's supposed to blow up later, so I can't stay up too long. But this is my first recording of the season, and the whales are distant, but I can definitely hear some familiar refrains and some likeness from the song of 2020 and 2019. So this will be the adventure, figuring out all the different changes that they've put into their repertoire. There are these sound channels in the reef system that just carry the song. If you hit one, it's just all of a sudden, even though the singer might be far away, the song becomes really, really clear.
Humpback song is one of the most complex acoustic displays in the non-human world. Only male humpbacks sing, and when they do, they sing continuously, sometimes for hours. Why they sing is still up for debate. Some theories suggest territorial defense. Others propose that song acts as a beacon, drawing whales toward each other across vast distances. Some have argued for echolocation, or that song might stimulate estrus in females. But the leading theory, the one with the most traction, is that song functions as a mediator between males, a kind of proxy for fighting, a way to assess each other without escalating to physical conflict. And in the chaotic, high-energy world of a heat run, where multiple males chase a single female, jostling for the position of escort, song may even help attract allies, cooperators, temporary teammates in a competition where the reward is the chance to pass on your DNA. To understand humpback song, it's best to think in layers. At the smallest scale, there are units, the basic acoustic elements. These units combine into phrases or patterns. When a pattern is repeated, it becomes a theme, and a sequence of themes, performed in a fixed order, becomes the song. A male repeats this entire structure over and over in what's called a song session. The song continually changes, sometimes slowly, what researchers call an evolution, sometimes abruptly in what's called a revolution. My work has been exploring humpback song through the lens of human music. Like music, the songs have structure, repetition, variation, and multiple levels of organization that feel strangely familiar. Many of the traits we use to define music as a system are present in humpback song. Generativity, cultural transmission, vocal learning, and a coordinated group behavior that shapes how the song evolves. What seems to be missing is entrainment, the ability to sync their song with others. This may suggest that the function of song is to signal individual identity rather than reinforce group cohesion. Even so, to compose, memorize, and perform the complete song with its nested structure, layered patterns, and evolving themes must require remarkable memory and intelligence. 50 million years ago, the ancestors of whales walked on land. Over roughly 8 million years, these animals transitioned from land to water, limbs becoming flippers, nostrils migrating to the top of the skull, tails flattening into flukes. These whales have been shaping, refining, and transmitting their songs across ocean basins for millions of years. In these waters, humpback mothers give birth to calves already weighing nearly a ton. In the calm shallows, the learning begins. A young whale practices tail slaps and breaches, building the strength and coordination it will need for the long migration back to the Salish Sea. When we think about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, one way to imagine it is as radio telescopes scanning the skies for signs of distant life. But the core question behind SETI is straightforward. How do we detect intelligence that does not resemble our own? Humpbacks offer one of the most complex communication systems on Earth, and their song structure, paired with their social world, shows how a very different mind can generate rich, evolving culture. They give us a living case study in how intelligence might emerge under entirely different conditions. And as we listen for voices beyond our planet, they remind us to honor the remarkable intelligences already here on Earth.